This is the Zvezda Panzerkampfwagen 8 Maus Super Heavy tank. This release continues Zvezda's trend of releasing unusual and obscure kits in plastic, as only 2 prototypes of this vehicle were ever built, and none saw service. If we look on the back of the box, there's several views of the completed kit. It's a monster. The completed kit is 10.6 centimeters long and consists of 18 parts. Let's look inside. There are 2 sprues of light grey plastic enclosed in a plastic bag. There's also a printed instruction sheet. There's no Art of Tactic card, but the box says this can be downloaded from the company's website. The instructions talk about Zvezda's Art of Tactic game in Russian and English on one side, with a detailed assembly guide on the other. While there are a few parts, assembly looks pretty straightforward. If we look at the plastic, this sprue has the turret, the tracks, hull bottom and gun mantlet. There's plenty of detail here, including detailed suspension pieces showing the complex suspension and road wheels. The other sprue has the upper hull and side skirts as well as the 12.8 cm gun and mounting parts. There's also the inner support pieces Zvezda kits use to secure the major hull components together. Detail is nice and sharp, as we've come to expect from Zvezda kits. This plastic is the new, harder, more model-like styrene they've been using recently. This trims and takes paint and glue better than the toy-like plastic of their earlier kits. So let's build it. Assembly begins with the tracks and the lower hull. Clip these parts from the sprue. The tracks are one piece with the complex suspension and tracks moulded together. The tracks are simplified as Zvezda trademark, but the suspension is very detailed. The lower hull piece is very narrow to accommodate the very wide tracks. Clean up any sprue attachment points here. Then attach the track pieces to the hull. There are posts and holes here that fit together. Push the pieces together firmly to get a tight fit here. The front and back posts are different and they serve to guide assembly, so you can't put the tracks on the wrong way. Here they are all fitted together. The next step is to add the internal bracing piece. This helps connect the upper and lower hull piece. Snip this off the sprue. It fits inside the lower hull piece here. Next up is the hull top. There's lots of good engine deck and ventilation details here. Snip this piece from the sprue. There are long mating edges here with the side skirts, so be sure to clean the sprue gates here thoroughly to get a nice smooth join. Lining up the posts and holes to secure the hull top can be a bit tricky. You'll need to flex the top piece a bit to get them all to line up, then push the piece firmly together. In the end, you get a nice tight join. Some glue inside the hull edges here will help secure this fully. The side skirts are the next major hull pieces. Snip these off the sprue and clean up. Some of the joints are on sloped surfaces, so cleanup is important here. There are posts and pins here to attach the side skirts fully to the hull. Press these firmly into place to avoid any unsightly gaps. The engine deck has a splash guard as a separate piece. This has pins for proper placement. The last piece to complete the hull assembly is the fuel tank. Join the 2 parts together to make the tank, then push the locating pins into the holes on the rear of the hull. That's the hull built. It all goes together well, and despite lots of parts, there are surprisingly few gaps. Turret assembly starts with the turret front and the internal gun support pieces. Snip the front turret piece free and clean it up. There are some heavy sprue gates here that need attention. There are 3 internal bracing pieces for the gun assembly, shown here in the instructions. Here they are all put together for attaching to the turret. There are also pins and guides for attaching this part to the lower turret piece, so go ahead and do this next. Clip the upper turret piece off the sprue. Make sure to clean up the edges here as they'll be visible on the finished kit. Then go ahead and mate this to the lower turret piece. This can be a bit fiddly, but there are locating pins to position it correctly. Now the gun mantlet piece can be cut free. The gun barrel fits tightly here. I had to open up the hole in the mantlet for the coax a little, but in the end it makes a good solid connection. This really is a beast of a gun. Finally, the mantlet assembly can be fitted to the turret. This is where positioning the half-circle tab the right way up earlier becomes important. This fits into a corresponding slot in the back of the mantlet to make a solid connection. Here's the finished Maus. It's huge and blocky, a good representation of the real thing. The assembly is straightforward and there are no major issues. Parts fit is good and the new harder styrene is good to work with. Detail is strong and even the interlocking armour pieces are shown. Let's look at this colossal vehicle. The Panzerkampfwagen 8 Maus was a German super heavy tank design, with only 2 prototypes produced before the project was abandoned. These were gigantic vehicles weighing 188 tons and measuring over 10 metres long. German tank doctrine at the time was for ever more armour and firepower, striving to create an invulnerable tank that could destroy enemy armour at will. However, the weight of the armour was one of the principal issues with this tank. Its colossal weight meant it was grindingly slow, with a top speed of just 20 kilometres an hour. It also couldn't cross most bridges, which further limited its mobility. The propulsion was a hybrid design with a conventional engine driving an electrical generator, which supplied power to the 2 electric motors which drove the tracks. The complex suspension had 24 road wheels per side with 1.1 metre wide tracks. The main gun was a 12.8 cm gun developed from the Pak-44 anti-tank gun. This gun was eventually used in the Jagdtiger tank destroyer. Coaxial armament was a 7.5 cm gun. Only one of the prototypes was fitted with a turret. The first prototype, built in late 1943, carried a large weight approximating the weight of the turret and was used for propulsion testing. The second prototype was fitted with the actual turret and armament, and featured a number of design changes based on testing. Krupp were working on 4 more Maus hulls in mid-1944 when production was halted, while testing of the prototypes continued. These hulls were later scrapped. Despite being a prototype, the second Maus was ordered into battle in the closing days of the war. However, it was destroyed by its crew before it saw action to stop it falling into enemy hands. After their capture, the first prototype hull was mated to the turret from the destroyed prototype, and the vehicle is on display at the Kubinka Tank Museum in Russia. In all, Maus was an evolutionary dead end. It was too big and heavy and the drivetrain and engines could barely move it. While it had thick armour and a big gun, its actual usefulness in combat was open to question. Certainly after experimenting with this concept, post-war tank development has generally moved away from super heavy designs to more balanced medium tanks. Because this tank was only ever a prototype and never saw action, there aren't any official Flames of War stats. However, I've tracked down some unofficial stats and we can have a look at these. Remember, these are unofficial, so I have no idea how these will play or how balanced the design is for play. You've been warned. Mobility was always an issue with this lumbering beast, which suffered engine fires and suspension problems from just being too heavy for the engine and drivetrain. This is reflected in the very slow rating for the Maus. In 4th edition terms, that means the Maus grinds along with a tactical move of 6 inches or 15 centimetres. All the dash speeds are 8 inches or 20 centimetres, but the unreliable special rule on page 67 of the late war rulebook says the cross-country and road dash speeds are reduced by 2 inches or 5 centimetres, back to 6 inches and 15 centimetres again. The Maus also has the overloaded rule on the same page, so the cross is a 4+. You'll want to keep this vehicle out of terrain. Given the armour plate is the root of the mobility issues, you'd expect the armour protection to be good. Maus has a front armour of 16, side armour 10 and top armour of 2. This means many Allied weapons would be struggling to penetrate the Maus. But the numbers aren't really that much better than a King Tiger, probably not worth the trade-off for mobility. Even the firepower of the main gun isn't much better. The King Tiger's 8.8 cm gun has anti-tank of 16, while the Maus is marginally better at 17. Rate of fire is 2 and the firepower is a whopping 2+. The range is also slightly longer at 48 inches or 120 centimetres. The 12.8 cm gun is also rated as a breakthrough gun, so infantry gun and unarmoured tank teams including passengers re-roll successful saves. The Maus also has slow traverse, but this rule is no longer used in 4th edition so can be ignored. The secondary armament is a 7.5 cm anti-tank gun. This has a range of 32 inches or 80 centimetres, a rate of fire of 2, anti-tank of 10 and a 3+ firepower. The only special rule is slow traverse, so again that can be ignored. So along with these stats, the Maus is big and slow, but has great armour protection and a long-range hard-hitting gun. However, there's no real advantage here over taking a King Tiger, and a more agile opponent could make this very slow speed of the tank a real liability. So this is an interesting kit from Zvezda. It's a unique subject and a historical curiosity. The kit looks great and this would be an intimidating thing to see on the table, but honestly I can't see anything other than novelty value being a good reason to field this instead of a King Tiger. I'm glad I've got one and I'm glad I got to build it, but I don't ever plan on using it. I'm sure some German players will be keen to try them out. If you're enjoying Fog of War, make sure to like and subscribe.